This episode of Nuff Said is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. To get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
In this world, there are heroes and there are devils. And in the kitchen of hell, the hero is the devil. Welcome to the Devil You Know. Hey heroes, welcome once again to the Devil You Know. Southgate Media and Capes and Lunatics own Daredevil podcast. Recording Season 3, Episode 12, One Last Shot. I am your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me, as he always is,
it's Mozz.
Welcome, Mozz. Only 2 episodes left here. And this is the first of the 2. Fisk's long-awaited reunion doesn't go as planned. Nelson and Murdoch take on a new client who holds key information on Kingpin. Our director this week is, of course, Phil Abraham. Stan Lee and Bill Everett getting those great Marvel created by credits. Drew Goddard created the series. Sam Ernest gets our written by this week. Our story editor, of course, is Tanya Kong. And our unsung hero, uncredited staff writer, hardest working woman in show business, Sarah Streicher. Welcome, Sarah. Thanks for listening. We hope. Hey, you know what? We give her a lot of press because she's uncredited, man. If it wasn't for us, people wouldn't know. We're fighting the good fight, Mozz. So speaking of fighting the good fight, this episode, of course, opens up with our antagonist, Mr. Fisk, atop his skyscraper, welcoming home his
Miss Vanessa.
Yes, his beloved wife, or not yet, his beloved lady, his girlfriend. And I gotta say, this is something that really struck me in this. And it was an interesting concept, sort of a parallel between Kilgrave from Jessica Jones and Kingpin here. In that, in both cases, these gentlemen are sort of building a place for this person, almost to, as Vanessa says later, Wilson certainly likes to display pretty things, and it is this. There's a quality in it's a very interesting. I am working hard to assess Vanessa in this episode. Is she a kept woman? Is she a willing participant? Is she even manipulating the entire story from the get-go?
Right.
And it's hard to tell, but I think that is one of the many, many, many wonderful selling points about Vanessa.
Yeah, as you see, even in this episode and in future episodes, she has sort of an edge to her that wasn't there so much before. Like, where did she develop this from? She was just an art dealer. She was a regular person in a lay person's world, and all of a sudden now she's got this edge to her. It seems a little incongruous to the rest of her character.
Well, I don't know. Well, I guess what I will say is, here's what I'll say: the character of Vanessa brings to the table a very interesting idea, which is essentially the idea of, the woman intrigued by the mob boss, which is not a new item. It's even very cliche. But I think what is interesting as we explore Vanessa over these next 2 episodes, and really, it's kind of disappointing that she only gets these 2 episodes, because I really feel she is chewing the scenery very nicely. And I think that she is definitely getting her 40 bites in. As you should always chew everything 40 times before you swallow, they say. I don't know if that's true. But she is...
Seems like a lot.
It seems like a lot, but it's one of those things it's like 50s wisdom. I don't know how true it is. But it's to aid digestion and to slow you down so you don't eat so much, I guess. But she is she plays these scenes so well that I really wish we have more. And I kind of have to feel there's these little hints in this episode and the next episode that makes me think if we had gotten a
Season 4.
Oh yeah, season 4. She might have been the head of the family.
Yeah, very much so. When in this episode, when she all of a sudden sits down in front of the monitors and orders a hit, really, really presumptuously, it almost like tacitly gets his approval, and then sends the murder butler off.
Yes, although I have to say, in that moment, there's this weird look on Kingpin's face.
Yeah, how did you interpret it? Because I had like opposing views, but how did you interpret it?
Vincent D'Onofrio, he plays this character so well.
Mm.
And in this moment, I kind of wonder, is it like, does he fear what she has become?
Mm.
And not for nothing, as an aspect of this, I think, and I don't want to spoil the next episode, but I think that in this moment, Wilson is second guessing his own plans in basically out of love for this woman that I think is something of his undoing in the end. So, I mean, that I guess if we're gonna really say that, I mean, I'll say that, her first effort out of the park, as it unfolds, shows, maybe she did not, maybe she's not as good at this job as she thought she was.
Right, and maybe she's just sort of like an excited little girl, able to play with things, and she doesn't really understand the full-on consequences of her actions. She's just been given this power for the first time. So in his face, I kept looking to see how he would react. Was he, a little bit taken aback and insulted by she would try to be? Would he feel threatened by her? Or would he feel like, oh my God, have I ruined her? That's not who I wanted her to be or what I wanted out of her. I wanted a respite from all of this. But he seemed accepting and excited about it, which was kind of cool, I guess.
Well, I mean, as the story progresses, because like I said, I don't want to get too much into next episode because we still got to do one more of these things.
Right.
Don't want to give away all the babies with the bathwater.
Right.
But because that happens near the end. But let's get to what brings about Vanessa's change of heart, because there are several items in this. Because and you can follow the train of thought through Vanessa, or you can look at some other aspects of this. Most notably, we have that Nadim has opted to basically turn state's evidence, but they have to get him. So essentially, they go to a tower.
Or bring Tower to him. Okay, right.
Yeah. To have Tower meet with Nadim. And prior to this, we do see Nadim sort of dealing with the very difficult situation he has with his wife here. That she has basically said, "You said you would never lie to me again," and now it turns out everything has been a lie.
Right.
Which, not for nothing, she doesn't tell a lie there.
No, she does have a point, but she was also sort of like in an emotional state after almost dying. So you can't really expect to hold her to her word in that emotional state. So she was acting a little out of her normal range, probably because she was a little upset. And people tend to take everything people say as the final word. Let her have her moment. That's what I would think,
Yeah. And that is fair. And I think but it sets up both the final scene and stuff for next episode that I think works very nicely as we watch it. We do see that basically, we have sort of two narratives here. One is the effort of Nelson and Murdoch to bring Nadim to the courthouse for the to do the testifying, and all the efforts and misdirects that they're going into. Meanwhile, we have Vanessa settling into the penthouse and very much coming to sort of feel just as trapped in the penthouse as she has felt anywhere. And it is a very telling scene when Poindexter, who failed to kill Karen Page, and gets the whole "I've clearly put too much on your shoulders" from Kingpin, which is like, oh, just kick a man while he's down.
Yeah, like at that point, do you think like he knows what he's doing to him? Like, is it purposefully turning a screw, or is he just so preoccupied with why Vanessa isn't responding to him the way he wants her to, and what he could do that's making him not see the effect this is having on him?
Well, I think. Well, let me put it to you this way. I think it's very much. This is him trying to make Poindexter feel bad. It's very much the idea that like they say, it's I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. And he knows how that disappointment is going to be turning screws in him,
Right?
And he's doing it just to punish him. And I think you get what I like to say is one of my classic lines about a living weapon. Is that the problem with a living weapon is that if you put a gun on the table, it's not going to get up and start shooting people of its own accord. But if you have a living weapon that can kill people, it may just decide one day people need to kill. And we see this with the rescue or the rear acquisition of Rabbit in the Snowstorm, where like a cat bringing you the dead bird it just caught for you. He's just like, look what I did. I want to be I'm helping.
Yeah.
And clearly killed that old lady.
Right. And I love that he thinks he's gonna be the next Wesley.
Mm-hmm.
And he boldly proclaims it as he's already assumed the title. It's like, oof.
Oh yeah, because he is very much of the mindset that he is on Easy Street and he doesn't know how much trouble he's in. And because he wants to be the next Wesley. He wants to be the most loyal soldier that Fisk could ever hope to have.
More than that, Fisk sitting in the car told him, I had a friend who I considered almost like a son when he was talking about Wesley. That is still sitting in his head.
Oh yeah, because he wants Fisk to be his daddy.
Right. Right.
And you can want it all you want, Poindexter, but it doesn't make it so. And I think that is the part that is killing him here,
Yeah.
And we see that Vanessa knows how he got the painting.
Right.
And we see is that this episode or the next episode when Kingpin realizes the painting's back at the apartment?
Oh, I think that we get that next episode.
We get that next episode. Okay, so we'll talk about that next episode. But, we see in this idea that, Poindexter is dangerous. Although I don't think...
Oh, no, I think we do get that at the end of this episode.
Oh, what, the painting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do think we get that, and it is just this idea, yes, because that's where we get the call out of the Wesley line, because Vanessa, in her own manipulative way, says to, basically trying to communicate to Wilson that, he says he's your new Wesley. Is that true? And he's like, no, it is not. Which I also think is telling, just because, I mean, on several different levels. One of which is just that, clearly Vanessa maybe is even trying to undermine someone who she may think as her rival, or at least wants to assess: is this guy a threat to me? Does he hold a place in Kingpin's heart? And it's like, no, not at all. And so she's just establishing her own position there,
right.
Which is important, of course. And like I said, clearly Fisk is not happy, and this is just basically leading this is the whole, and this again are these things where Wilson Fisk thinks he's in control, but he really isn't. And I think that's the most telling quality here is that Wilson Fisk thinks he's in control, but he was never in as much control as he thought he was. Although he has a moment where it looks like he's very much in control because Nadeem does get so he's trying to get to the courthouse, and they come up with this plan where they're going to send the motorcade, and then he's going to climb into the back of Five Senses Communications, a sort of a cable van, and the cable van driver, or the who's actually a cop, he's going to drive him to the courthouse, and that so that as a misdirect.
Right.
But of course that doesn't work because Wesley's guys, and it's interesting because I was wondering, are these FBI agents or are these Wesley's? And it's Wesley's guys.
Felix's guys.
Oh, Felix's guys. Yeah, Felix's guys. And he is, and so I guess you feel a little less bad about murdering all these people.
Right.
Yeah, but they light up the truck, and then we get to see some really great Daredevil stuff where he's like telling Nadeem, okay, shoot here.
And just to point one thing out, Nadeem's a terrible shot because he was like point blank, at least 6 inches off of everywhere Daredevil told him to hit.
Oh, but he made the shot, so I'm guessing Daredevil was counting for that.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, it might have just been one of these things where, not for nothing, these are two guys sort of pretending what they're doing, and so, whether or not it actually, so obviously they didn't rehearse it enough. So, okay, shoot here.
Right.
Yes, but like I said, it worked because they did shoot the guys, and then they have to get to where they're going because Daredevil, I just love Daredevil using his senses throughout this because that's one of the things I think that you overlook with Daredevil. It's like, he's a pretty good fighter and all that kind of stuff, but really his powers are just this incredible sense of hearing and his ability to orient himself in space using that in sort of a three-dimensional model, the way that people who have eyesight really can't.
Yeah, it's almost like he has X-ray vision, but no real vision.
Well, exactly. Yes, exactly, and that's a great way to look at it.
He almost gets like a third-person view of the whole world in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and a 360 view too.
Yeah.
That's the other aspect of it that is really, really amazing in his powers. So, but they, and they have to get to the car and fight their way through, and that's a nice little shoot and fight scene.
Yeah.
We had some good fight scenes these last couple episodes. But they do get to the courthouse. They get into the cab. Nadeem says, "I think I should drive." And they do drive to the courthouse, and Nadeem gets there just in the nick of time, gives his testimony, and then, as the jury is deliberating, Matt uses his senses again and hears one of the jurors stand up and just read everyone's address. And that is just this frighteningly powerful scene. Because it really shows, again, how no matter how much they think they're finally getting Wilson does have at least some cards still left to play.
Yeah.
Although, again, like I said, you got to say that you're kind of lucky he didn't have some real patriot on that jury, some guy who's going to stand up and say, "What, you think that's going to intimidate me?"
Yeah.
Because if a Matt Murdock was on that jury, he would have stood up and and made this big impassioned speech. But then that would have ended the series a little faster than we wanted.
Right. We still got an episode to go.
Yeah, so that happens, and basically they realize, everything's falling apart now. And they're trying to figure out a way out, and Nadim basically after Matt goes off on his own to say, gonna make sure Tower tries it again, which is vague, but we later see what exactly it is he does. And Nadim basically sucker punches Foggy and runs out.
Yeah, pretty much knocks him out too.
Yeah, well, it's not like Foggy's a superhero,
Right.
Foggy is not a professional boxer. He's not even an amateur boxer. He is at best a guy who worked a deli. He's at best a deli man, and mostly he's just a lawyer.
Yeah.
He does. He doesn't get into fights. He reads books and makes fantastic arguments about them, just like we do. But Dean punches out Foggy and goes on the run.
He goes back to his house.
Yes, he goes back to his house. And when he gets back to his house, we do see Vanessa. This is where Vanessa makes her big stance and basically says, "Look, you can't have them stop talking when I'm in the room. If I'm part of your life, I'm in your life. You don't have to hide it from me." And that's where they see that Nadim has gone back to his house, and they start the plan to discredit him. And then Vanessa basically says to Wilson, if he is a threat to us, wouldn't it just be easier to remove the threat?
Which is interesting because Felix just got done telling him, hey, look, the jury's already done. He's completely irrelevant. Let's think about the fallout from killing him when we don't really need to. The testimony's sealed.
Yes.
And she completely just says, ha, 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 look at how cool I am. Wouldn't it be great? Have you tried killing him yet?
Yes. And we all know how well that always worked out in these superhero series.
Right, and that's what made me think, like, oh, is he thinking, oh, this woman is going to be the death of me? Or was he thinking, I'm okay with that?
Well, one thing I think we see from Felix, especially next episode, is so long as the money's good, he's there. And
but if the money is good, he does know how to get things done. He's pretty smart.
Yes, and this is, I think, probably the biggest failing in this is. But here's what I think it is. I think there's a part of whereas, yes, she is the little girl, mad, drunk with powers, like, ooh, I get to sit in the big chair and get to do this thing. At the same time, Wilson, I think, is very much still the little kid in the candy store too, and he's as excited to murder someone as Vanessa is.
I think he's excited for her to have, like, to be initiated by blood into his world.
Yes. Well, that
more
is
than anything. I don't think playing an irrelevant pawn matters to him, and I don't think he gets any excitement unless he moves his goals forward or closer to him, I guess. So to him, it's like, okay, whatever. But yeah, she's like dying to be his fatal flaw.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's, I guess there's other ways you can read it too. Yeah. And yes, it could be that he's just is going along for her. But I do think that there is a viciousness in Wilson that he hides. And I think part of what I think excites him about is this idea that he can be his true self with her. Like, not even just, like, he's already shown her a lot, but I think he wants her to, he feels like now we can truly be, the emperor and empress of New York, that is I think what he is going for with that. Anyway, but Nadim is at his house, and he's doing this little goodbye message to his wife and kids, which is so sad. Because at first I thought he was actually going to kill himself. I thought he was actually just going to hang himself. But then, he's in the back, he's drinking a beer, and Poindexter shows up. And, and he says, I was hoping it'd be you. And they have this nice little conversation, and he tries to talk Poindexter into, look, we can both be cops again, and we can take him down. We can do this together. And of course, Poindexter's having none of it.
He's a ridiculous guy.
Yeah. And he's got the gun on him, and then Nadim goes to draw his gun, and of course he gets shot in the head. And he falls into the swimming pool. So sad. And that is how we end this episode. Any final thoughts, Mozz?
No, I think we touched on everything. I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is the penultimate episode, as we say.
Oh, the one thing I did want to touch on was when that moment happens, when the whole rest of the episode ended up being completely for naught, and Daredevil, says, "See, I told you," like how broken Foggy looks. And even when they're at the end in the gym, it just seems like he has no argument left to make, which is really, really sad.
Yeah, well, because it does look like Wilson has won. Because Wilson, if he can control the jury, then you can't convict.
Right.
Unfortunately, juries are made of regular people who all have loved ones, and and cannot all be protected all the time.
Right.
And we know that Wilson Fisk, he is literally a comic book villain. He will certainly do his worst as possible.
Which is what makes me think of an interesting question. Like, if executioners have to wear masks, should jurors also?
I mean, it's supposed to be anonymous.
Metaphorical as they might be. Just what I mean is protect their identities, you know?
Yeah, and certainly they actually, I think they do that sometimes in some high-profile trials where they do try to keep...
I'm sure in El Chapo's trial, you couldn't have a whisper of what any juror's name was.
But, part of the jury system is that you do have to verify that this is a jury of your peers. So, you got to make sure, because your lawyer needs to vet them, and, so there's a whole process there in order to have a jury of your peers. So, yeah, well, this was a grand jury even. So it was really, it's kind of low on the totem pole to go after, but Wilson, he does like to dot the I's and cross the T's. So join us next week, folks, for the final episode.
Hopefully not the final episode, but
we'll have to see.
Maybe
we'll have to see where it goes next. I'm hopeful. Everyone's hopeful that Disney is going to bring these guys back in a year or two, which wouldn't be the worst thing to ever happen. But we'll have to see what happens next. In the meantime, Mozz, if people would like to commiserate with you at the loss of the Daredevil, how can they find you?
Or they can reach out to me via email at mozzmanzor@gmail.com, or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And, of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way, the way our Mozz and Paz once did.
Moms and Paz.
Yes, at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. And, of course, follow me on Twitter as I live tweet sometimes Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. maybe, or possibly Gotham or Cloak and Dagger, which is coming back. At Charlie Esser, that's CharlieEsselCR.
And guys, good news, you guys hit a record of half an hour.
Thank you, Tristan. Anyway, look for the 2 E's in the middle.
Ding!
For quality, yes. Okay.
One thing I will say, I just realized is right at the end. My only gripe with this episode, not of the show, but of our episode, not enough Tristan.
Yeah, well, he was doing his homework, so. But we'll make sure he comes back for our final episode in, for us, just a few moments. For you, 1 week from today. Dun dun dun. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, as you walk through the kitchen of hell and you see the devil on one shoulder and another devil on your other shoulder, always stick with the devil you know. Good night.